Even more files in the Russia collusion hoax are expected to be released this week. CIA Director John Ratcliffe is telling Fox News that he's been working to declassify information that sheds more light on Hillary Clinton and the FBI's roles in this growing scandal. Watch.
Part of what came out last week was about how John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they all pushed the known fake Steele dossier into intelligence community assessments and as the basis for Crossfire Hurricane and all that. But what hasn't come out yet, and what's going to come out, is the underlying intelligence that I have spent the last few months making recommendations about final declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to.
That is the CIA director. So this controversy may extend beyond the Obama administration. Devin Nunes, who's the chair of the president's Intelligence Advisory Board and former chairman of the House Intel Committee during Trump's first term, well, he says he's also looking into what may have happened during the Biden administration. Nunes says he's also zeroing in on the Mar-a-Lago raid, claiming the Biden team could have been searching for the report Gabbard released last week, which exposed Team Obama's internal machinations on the Russia matter.
This was an unprecedented act in U.S. history where the Department of Justice raids a former president's home. That was to try to stop President Trump from being reelected. I'm going to try to get out as much of this information and get it declassified as possible.
So you believe that they raided Mar-a-Lago because they were looking for this? They were looking for the intelligence community assessment, your report on Russia's influence campaign targeting the 2016 presidential election. That's why they raided Mar-a-Lago?
I believe it had to be one of the things that they were looking for. Because, look, that report is pretty damning.
Now, critics say some members of the Obama administration could face legal implications for their actions here, and Biden officials could potentially face similar exposure for covering it up. The CIA director, from whom we just heard, wants to know ultimately if it all adds up to a criminal conspiracy.
To Pam Bondi and our Department of Justice, Kash Patel and our FBI to investigate the conspiracy to do what and what charges that they're capable of bringing. But again, I don't think statute of limitations are going to impact, because in a conspiracy, Maria, the statute of limitation doesn't start to run until the last act in furtherance of that conspiracy.
All right, so a lot to unpack. It was a busy morning on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria, with those two guests there, Jason. Let's start with John Ratcliffe, the CIA director. He's someone that you know pretty well. He's someone who has a really extensive background in all of this. He has been working on this, he said, for months, pouring through these documents, and he's suggesting, if not saying, there's a lot more, at least it seems to me, a lot more coming.
Well, and you've got to believe him. He's a CIA director. He was the director of national intelligence before. He was a former U.S. attorney focused on terrorism cases. He was a member of Congress. He was on the Intel Committee. He was on the Judiciary Committee with me. I'm the chair of the Oversight Committee. Devin Nunes is chairing the Intel Committee. You got Trey Gowdy, Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, all working on the intelligence, the Benghazi. And we're all looking for Hillary Clinton's emails because there were 4 dead Americans. But then suddenly you have Comey who comes forward and says, oh, there's nothing here, we're not going to charge her, and that's a whole nother discussion. But that led to the furtherance of trying to find certain documents that were being hidden and pushed away from us. Then you start to fast forward and you start to learn more and more about the FISA abuse. Why is it that all of a sudden, through a lot of this document production, you had people with experience like John Ratcliffe who go out and start to look at this FISA abuse and start to understand, wait a second, what were they using as the predicate in order to justify spying on the Trump campaign and others associated with them? Then you start to realize, wait, they didn't have the proper predicate because Hillary Clinton had put $10 million through Mark Elias. This is the allegation. The law firm then goes overseas. They have this $10 million. Up comes this document that can't be verified, even though the FISA document says it was verified.
The dossier.
The dossier was verified. That didn't happen. And so what was going on there. Comey soft pedals Hillary Clinton, basically lets her go, does not investigate lying and testifying to Congress through questioning that Jim Jordan did on that select committee. So all of this is moving forward, and when they start to go and produce these documents, you start to unpeel this, and then the unthinkable happens. Donald Trump actually wins. And so now the allegation from Tulsi Gabbard is, wait a second, what we've done is we got to change this narrative. It's now December. Donald Trump's going to start getting presidential briefs. He's going to have his people in power. And evidently, according to Tulsi Gabbard, there is going to be a change in the intelligence that is directed by Obama, but executed by Brennan, Clapper, and Comey. Potentially. So that's why this continues to go. Now that John Ratcliffe is the CIA director, he can go get documents we haven't been able to get before. You have things that when he was the chairman, Devin Nunes, of the Intel Committee, couldn't see, should have been able to see, but couldn't be able to see. So this portends where we are today. This portends what the future and the foreshadowing by John Ratcliffe. Take him very seriously. He's a seasoned attorney. He's the director of the CIA, and he is able to go back and pull up documents using career officials and having their assessment go back and say, how did this happen?
Lisa, when we were discussing this topic before the show, I could practically see steam coming out of your ears when it comes to double standards, which you see all over the place here.
Well, it's almost too much to cover. I mean, you can even just look in the way the classified documents were handled, right? You look at 30 to 40 FBI agents show up at Mar-a-Lago, 10 to 15 vehicles, right? They show up unannounced. They, rage through the house, guns a-blazing, so to speak. And then you look at how Joe Biden's classified documents, how that was handled. A consensual agreement. It was prearranged. It was conducted quietly. There was no show of force. And then you look at the fact that as President of the United States, you have the ultimate classification and declassification authority, something Joe Biden never had when he stole those documents as a vice president or when he was in the United States Senate, which I think just right there shows you the motivations of Biden's Department of Justice. The last thing I'll add is all the Trump administration is asking people to do is believe that the people who previously lied and abused government. For instance, Barack Obama, when he was president of the United States, they spied on the Associated Press. In 2013, they stole phone records of more than 20 AP phone lines affecting over 100 journalists. They spied on the Associated Press. This took place 2 months of records. They did so. John Brennan spied on this, the Senate Intelligence Committee, lied to Congress about that as well in 2014. And then you look at James Comey. This is a guy who admitted to taking FBI documents that he should not have, gave them to his law school buddy so that he could get to the media and force a special counsel investigation. And then also the guy who somehow walked across, what was it, the 8647, and somehow, innocently, it was just there, some kid put it together, right? So please spare me. I just think it's so obvious the abuse of government that took place, and anyone telling you otherwise is just a complete liar.
And on the list of liars, James Clapper also lied to
I know,
Congress.
I should have had one for him,
right.
too.
So you want to jump in, though?
I just want to add on to this exactly what Lisa's saying. Let's remember, the Inspector General at one point came to me, I'm the chairman of the Oversight Committee, and said, hey, Hillary Clinton's got classified information in a non-secure location. We've asked permission to go get it. What the? They had to ask permission? They send a raid without a proper predicate to go after Donald Trump. They bring CNN in tow, have the cameras going, lights are flashing, guns drawn. And then Hillary Clinton has this information that she had in a non-secure safe at her attorneys who did not have classification to handle this material. It was so sensitive that even me, with the highest security clearance you can possibly have, could not see it. It was code word sensitive, and the only way that I could look at it is not, because people would be killed. And she got away with that, and she had that information, and it's still fundamentally wrong to this day.
Alicia, just to bring you in on this subject real quick, reading sort of between the lines here, Ratcliffe is at least hinting at potential prosecutions. That's not his ambit, right? That's not his brief, but he's suggesting that might happen. There was a question about statute of limitations and whether that might apply here. The other side of it might say, even some conservatives arguing, well, this could be a really scandalous political dirty trick, but is it a crime? Those are some of the core questions that I think we're going to be facing coming up here.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to have to wait and see, because it does sound like it's going to be a pretty big week in terms of learning more information. But what does that information exactly mean when it translates to going to court and bringing forward charges, and that's going to be up to the DOJ, right? Because as Ratcliffe brought up, there is statute of limitations considerations here, but he also pointed out that John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020, also to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before Durham in 2022. Comey testified before the Senate Committee in September of 2020. All of this stuff happened within the last 5 years. So what does the statute of limitations say? But we don't know, because we don't know what the charges are going to be just yet. But also, as we think about all of that, remember, President Obama's office said that out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of the White House with a response. There were 6 indictments on the Trump side with the Russia investigation. So you bring all of that together, it's going to be a very big week.
Turning now to the Biden decline cover-up, a separate scandal here. Former counselor to the president, Steve Ricchetti, and former Biden senior advisor, Mike Donilon, are expected to be interviewed by the House Oversight Committee this week. Now, last week, lawmakers praised former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain's candor, allegedly, during his interview. Unlike other ex-Biden officials, Klain did not plead the Fifth and insisted that Biden was, quote, mentally sharp despite forgetfulness and low energy. He also admitted that his former boss mixed up names and looked tired before that disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump. Now, at least 6 other Biden-era officials are scheduled for interviews in the coming months, including the special assistant to the president, Ian Sams, and former White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. I'm a little confused, Lisa, by Ron Klain's claim there, because I guess he didn't plead the Fifth, so that's good. But he went out saying, oh, no, he was mentally sharp, except for all the forgetfulness and weariness, et cetera. So I guess if you ignore all of the lack of sharpness, he was very sharp.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. You would say it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
But the Mike Donilon is interesting because this is a guy who had worked for him since 1981. And the book Original Sin, it noted that Biden forgot his name dating back to even 2019, which to me is interesting because the basement strategy that the Biden campaign, they were operating in the 2020 presidential election, it sort of begs the question that it was probably because he was already starting to lose his marbles and less to do about COVID. So I would be interested in seeing if he ends up, testifying. Does he plead the Fifth? What does he do? Also, beyond this, I think one area that we could see happen, I've interviewed Senator Rand Paul about this, is he wants the Department of Justice to charge Fauci for lying to Congress and then testing the pardon authority in court, because he says that there was an Autopen for the Fauci pardon. So he thinks that could be, potentially tested in the court. So it'll be interesting to see if that's sort of the strategy that Republicans go in on some of these pardons. So I guess we'll see about that. But I would like to see that happen.
Jason,
if anyone's listening.
We got from the former president's son the excuse a few days ago that it was an Ambien situation from a trip the former president had taken, even though the dates didn't really make sense there. Here's the former chief of staff coming in and saying, oh, yeah, no, he was sharp, minus all the problems, right? They're running out of excuses, it feels like.
Well, Ambien, I've used Ambien. It works really well. You get a solid night's sleep, and then boom, it stops. To suggest that the president of the United States took Ambien before a debate, what an idiot. I mean, that's just stupid, right? I mean, that's the president of the United States, and that's what your son, the smartest person on the planet, is saying? Look, going back to the Autopen, of which I've been deeply involved with the oversight project there at Heritage for a long time, I've looked very closely at it. There are 2 components to this. One is, was there a conspiracy to cover up, and how did they execute that? But the second part of it is all the documents. That has not been exhaustively gone through. And until they do that, you've got to be careful on who you bring. The most important person on Chairman Comer's list is Jeffrey Zients, because Klein was the chief of staff for the first 2 years, but the second 2 years, roughly, was Jeffrey Zients. And it's the last 2 years that I think are highly questionable because.
And he's on that list. He's going to testify.
Yeah,
or at least
what you see in the use of the Autopen is it's like a hockey stick. It just sort of jumps up, particularly in the last 6 months of the Biden administration. So why is it that he's declining? Low energy, not really showing up for work very often, and yet the Autopen starts screaming forward with all of these pardons and commutations and pieces of legislation and all of these other things being signed. That's what's highly suspicious.
It's almost like you've done investigative work before, Jason.
Yeah.
Alicia,
Maybe as chairman of the Oversight Committee.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
there was an attempted cover-up. There's no doubt about that. It wasn't a good one because you can't cover up what we could all see, right? They were aggressively lying to us and gaslighting us about what we were all noticing and saying, no, that's not true. But the subsequent reporting with the media finally coming around to this now that Biden has been safely shuffled away and they can now tell us what they knew or what now can be admitted, they were like putting bright colored tape on the floor to direct the president where to walk. Right? They knew that they had a very serious problem on their hands while they told all of us he's fine, not only fine in the moment, fine to serve as president until 2029.
They did not just tell us he's fine. They eviscerated any reporter who brought up the question over his fitness for office. Just ask Jackie Heinrich, just ask Peter Doocy. They can tell you. But also what I've been struck by is how the Biden family has tried to help out here when you have Hunter Biden's interview there. And then you think about was it 2 weeks ago we were sitting on this very desk when the New York Times interview with former President Biden came out, and our heads exploded because he was very defiantly in a very short interview with the New York Times said, I made all the decisions. I basically knew what I was doing. Okay, got that, folks? Right before all of his people were headed up to Capitol Hill for an interview. Real good strategy there, guys.
With the New York Times in details in that story contradicting what he said in that interview.
Can I just add, that was hilarious because the breaking news hit and you have 3 people around me all just chomping at the bit, trying to get in on the, because everyone was so fired up about the story. I felt like I was chum in the water.
I feel I imagine Democrats would love the Bidens collectively to stop helping on this front, but they keep giving interviews, and as they do, we'll cover it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.